tuned in to Transmissions, where each week Aquarium Drunkard presents a strange conversation for our strange times. I'm your host, Jason P. Woodbury, and this week on the show I am joined by Elisa Ambrogio of Magik Markers. Magik Markers have a new album out now on Drag City. It's called 2020, so as you might expect, it's violently chaotic and also strangely beautiful. She joined me to discuss it, the value of good quarantine companionship, and discuss the idea of diving into music, and figuring out how to really inhabit it before you're even sure what it is you're doing. I hope you enjoy this conversation. We'll speak more on the other side. I guess we can start off, actually, just by talking about 2020, the record.
Okay. We named it before we knew.
Wait, so that's great. Did you guys name this record, in advance? Like before you knew that this was going to be like an apocalypse year?
Yeah, we were, 2020 started kind of hopefully, it was kind of it felt like things were shifting culturally, and there's a real cool vibe around end of 2019. I mean, not real cool, but certainly not this. So I just felt that Zero Boys record, Living in the 80s. It's so we almost called it Living in the 20s, but I didn't want to totally rip off the Zero Boys, so then we kind of just went back and forth between 2020 and Living in the 20s, and then I was like, okay, let's call it 2020 because it was so epic looking. It's just and in Roman numerals, the two M's for Magik Markers and the two the Roman numerals for 20 and 20, it just looked really epic and this. I don't know. It's the worst year ever. So that's awesome.
So the liner notes, they sort of make a joke, or the album notes rather, they make a joke that the 2010s were too twee for Magik Markers, and that you three only show up when, what's the term they use? Markers only appear in times of duress. So I imagine to some degree that's a joke, or at least partially a goof, but at the same time, this record does seem to fit the feeling this year, and I wonder what that's like for you, having made it before this year. Is it weird to hear?
Well,
just kind of have it, or how did it work rather?
Well, that's a good question, and I know there's it's two-sided because we started recording right at the I think around 2017-ish, 2016-ish, which is just the weird dark vibe of the administration that is currently in power happened, and everything just seemed history started happening really fast, and everything felt really culturally so weird. So there was already that kind of darkness or whatever that vibe is, and I think something shifted in 2015 or something, before anything, something just, I remember hearing about Sandra Bland being murdered, and I was her dying in custody, and I just remember, and there was a really popular song at the time, Or Nah by, that song, The Weeknd does a guest verse on it, and it's just it's kind of just about doing sex. The rhythm is literally a squeaking bed. If you listen to it on headphones,
oh yeah,
it was the song of the summer, that summer, and I had this weird sort of surreal that song would just be on repeat in my mind. And there was a woman online who did a sign language of The Weeknd's verse on that song Or Not, and there's it was just like this woman in a messy room being like, pussy so good, got to save that shit for later. And I was like, wow, this like, and at the same time, like maybe somebody who'd gone to see like the Amy Schumer movie, like there was like a shoot 'em up at like a lady comedy movie.
Right.
Just like,
right.
And it just felt like this weird shift. Like that summer is when stuff started to feel surreal to me, I guess. And that's sort of when we started writing this record. Like that's when a lot of the songs started being written and worked on or whatever. And then there was just an idea of sort of having like in times that are hard, it's actually not okay. In the Great Depression, that's when Shirley Temple got really popular, right?
Yeah.
So do you really want like a song, like a jam that makes you like feel the vibe of the now? Or do you want something that's like this is soothing or comfort, like there's an A$AP Rocky song called Sundress. That's like a really happy song. I think it came out around 2017, 2018, whatever. And like, maybe that's what you want to listen to right now. I don't know if you want to listen to something that's like feeling the vibe of the now, because it's like not a great vibe. But that said, you can't help but like make something that is, you're in it. You don't have a ton of perspective. You're subjective, and you're going to make your thing that is natural, unless you're a person who's really good at pretending,
like or creating something that is designed for some other purpose or whatever.
Yeah, and in some way we tried to be a little bit more optimistic. I mean, for me, I didn't try to be a little bit more optimistic, but I was like, like what's something that makes me happy? And like one thing that I feel like over the past, maybe, I don't know, there's a F. Scott Fitzgerald quote where it's like in your 20s you think love will save you, in your 30s you think your friends will save you, and in your 40s or your 50s, I don't know, he died when he was 44, so he probably said 40s, or maybe he said 30, I don't know, a lot happened to him in a very short period of time. So in your 30s you think your friends will save you, but when you grow up you realize nothing will, or something. And it's just I'm paraphrasing really poorly, a very eloquent kind of dumb statement, but I actually have found like things moving opposite of that, where it's like the older I get, the more I value like the love and friends in my life, kind of. So that was like an aspect of this record, was the only joy that really like came of it, was sort of like all of us together and just like just playing together, and like that sheer like the sheer like there's only corny ways to talk about this. No matter how I say it, it's going to sound cheesy, but yeah.
This is a pro cheesy podcast, so feel free to get as earnest as you want, because there are some moments of this record that I feel like reflect the anxiety or the weirdness of the sort of spookiness of right now. I think that Hymn to 2020 sort of has a feeling of, I mean, that's like really like just a lament, and I mean that really wonderfully.
I thank you so much. That was that was literally like, I finished mixing that in January, and I literally like wanted to just like play. That's really nice. That makes me so happy. Thank you.
Yeah. But then there's a lot of variety on the record too. It's not just one thing, I don't want listeners who are checking out this interview to think that like the record isn't also a ton of fun, because it is. Find You Ride, it's got such a cool, like vibe, and That Dream, parentheses, Shitty Beach, these are like, they're so, there's a lot of fun on this record. So I did want to zero in a little bit on that and ask you what it felt like to be making this record with John and Pete, after, it's been a while, right? So if you guys started this in 2015, it kind of lines right up with the last record, fairly well. Like
writing wise, maybe some of the songs got written like around there, but then like I think we started recording in like 2016 or 2017. I know I should know that. I have no idea. Time is a flat circle. I have no idea what's going on. But
this year, nobody is going to blame you for not having a real accurate sense of when something happened. Every single day, it's like, did that happen on Thursday? You know, and they're like, I don't know. It's Wednesday right now, and you're like, oh shit, I thought, anyway.
It's May 92nd or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, like there was that sense of like just the joy of playing together after a long time of not playing together. And weirdly, like this is the first time I was coming into Markers having toured solo for like 2 years, like with other bands, with other bros, with other musicians. So it was kind of so cool to come, because when you play with someone new, like it's like a relationship or something. You're like testing it out. It's like different. It's weird. It's like, and especially I'm not like, you know, probably it's not exactly the same for everyone, but for me, like it's a really personal, like, you know, it's not just like a gig where you're like, yep, you know, let's vamp in E minor, you know, like I don't play that way. So it just coming back to Magic Markers was so fucking sick, because we have this like interlocked relationship of just like it's a friendship, but it's also like everybody really listens to each other. So improvising kind of takes on this different sort of, like there would be time, I'm annoyed with myself, but I'm going to say it anyway, whatever. There would be times where we were all just like, whoa, we all just like change, like everything would change at the same time, and it wouldn't be on, you know, like that's but it's little things like that where it's just like your brain is like pre-processing, like listening to each other, like you know each other so well. So in that way, it was really, really fun. And also, we've been practicing and touring a lot before the last record, and this one we were like, I haven't seen you in like a year. Like we just we're so far away from each other. So it was a real like, it was just a treat. It was a treat, Ethan.
Well, there's an energy, right? Like when you're back together, when you're with people that you're like, oh yeah, these are the people I really want to be with, you know? There's an energy to that feeling that when you combine it with what you're talking about, which is sort of knowledge and understanding of each other as players, you know, that's a pretty potent combination, I have to imagine.
Yeah, and I think like part of what the band has been always is like weirdly more than the sum of our parts, like where we're all like, well, what did that was like pretty cool. Did we do that? It was like pretty cool. You know, like we all like, we're better together, kind of. I mean, just, you know, a true band in that way. We are not like,
We had Bill Frisell on this podcast a couple weeks ago.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah, he's the best. But I asked him if he believed in like telepathy musically, like sort of connecting.
Hell yeah.
Okay, and so he was very pro that. Have you experienced things like that? Do you feel like you're in?
Yeah, like I mean, I'm not a very like magical brained person. I'm not like
there is some astrology we're gonna have to talk about on the record.
Oh no. Well, I feel like in my brain that I don't know, Ben, I live my life is joined with the love of my life is very he thinks in a very different way than me about all of these things, and he's often calling me out on my hypocrisies. For instance, when I make food, I'm really serious in the kitchen about like not bringing bad vibes in. Like you can ruin a dinner if you're like tense around my soup, for instance.
Yeah.
So like,
sure.
Ben's like, oh, you don't believe in magic, but I'm gonna fuck up the soup if I'm like worried about something. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't make up the rules. I just know what feels right to me. You can't be tense around the soup. So it's a similar thing with like telepathy in jamming is like, I don't believe in a lot of like, it doesn't, I literally, maybe I'm like one of those people who like has no empathy or something, someone who doesn't understand suffering until it happens to them. I'm like that with like woo-woo shit. Like
with woo-woo.
I don't understand it unless it happens to me. So I really genuinely have never had a supernatural ghosty experience. Almost nothing. I've tried really hard when I was little to like have them. A guy died in my mom's bedroom. I used to sit where he sat to try to like get the vibe. I have had no scare nothing supernatural, like literally has ever happened to me. Nothing about speaking of astrology, nothing astrological has ever been accurate. And not even that, it hasn't even been flattering, Jason. How am I gonna like it if it doesn't even flatter me? How dare you, astrology? How dare you?
Yeah, no kidding.
So within that, telepathy within music, when you have friends, when you have people you're close to that you just lock in with, you don't know why, but you're like, oh, you're about to be my best friend.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like that. It's
thing.
like you're locked in, and you're just like it. And I become increasingly more like ham-fisted trying to describe it. So,
well, yeah, because what you're talking about is like, thankfully, a moment where you don't have to think about what you're feeling, you're experiencing. You're just totally making something. You're in the right zone. You're in the place that you're trying to get to most of the time.
You're in the unconscious mind.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the reason that we have such a hard time describing those experiences is because they're so rare, we don't get to feel them as much as we might hope. There are people, of course, who are better at getting to those places than others, and certainly I think that in the world of music we've all encountered those kinds of people who can just go straight there, but for me at least it takes a lot of preparation and openness and the right spirit. So I think you can sort of hear that on this record. Was this the first time you guys had worked with Jason at Black Dirt Studio, or had you guys recorded there before?
I don't know. Maybe Pete or Shaw could have done stuff. That was the first time for me. I knew Jason, but I had never recorded there. Rhonda, Rick Bishop, Chris Corsano, and Ben Chasney, they had recorded with Jason and said it was great. And so I was just like, I really wanted, because the previous record, we were like, we're not going to do like any studio time. We're going to do like, like everything's going to kind of be like just really organic, like live jams with like a little bit of like sewing in of other things. And we did some recording in the studio, but it was kind of like, this one we were like, let's just be really spontaneous. Let's really just play together and like have that organic closeness, kind of just be committed to tape, like whatever it is, whatever happens or whatever. And so, and Jason's amazing, and he's really just like ahead. So he just wanted to be like, whoa, like what if, like, so to some extent I was like, no, you need to be meaner to us. We will do bad time wasting things if you don't yell at us.
Yeah, you need to be studio managed or whatever. Yeah.
To some extent. But he was so good at like just being like, there was a thing that we did that was literally checking mics, and we were like, oh, it's like, it kind of turned into like playing, and he was like, okay, I was just trying to dial in the sounds, but I started recording because it sounded really good. And so then we like, that ended up going on to the EP that we put out over the summer, and it was just like, it was literally called Check and Levels for like 2 years.
Yeah.
But,
Do titles come late to you guys usually? Are they one of the last things, or
it depends.
What? Yeah,
it depends on like I don't know, if the song started as something with like lyrics and structure, then probably it has a title already. But if something comes out of an improvisation, then it does not have a title at all.
Lyrically, what did it look like for you going into this record? Did you have a lot of this stuff sort of written out? Lyrically previously?
I have a lot always of writing. Not all of it is. There's just a lot. There's like a lot. I write a lot. I don't know, like, again, it's not like, oh God, they're all just like nuggets of gold. Like, you should release it all. It's so perfect and good. It's not. It's just that I write a lot, and that's just what I do. So there was some songs were just completely written actual songs where I was like, I don't like this song. It's stupid, but I guess I could play it with you. And then we played it, and John and Pete did something so outside of how I had envisioned something that I was like, you made my sucky thing good. So it's like, it was like really cool in that way. But then other stuff was, there was like little bits written of stuff, and then it just kind of like changed in the improvisation to like just in the moment, like sort of more free yapping. And yeah.
How about with stuff like guitar stuff? Do you usually go in with a lot of specific stuff written there too, or was there, on this particular record at least, more of that sort of, we're going to improv and then things are going to start to form out of that?
That's a good question. I think there is a certain, sometimes I will, for freer stuff, I might, or anyone might say like, for the guitar tone, can it sound like, can we kind of like call up this vibe, or can it be sort of this? But then, you know, with more structured songs, which for some reason I'm more dismissive of, I'm like, oh, that was some stupid thing. But I like, because I've hung out with it more or something, like there was more written guitars, but I often we pull those either out of the mix or down, because I'm like, nah, it's just like boring, like
yeah,
chords. But yeah.
I wonder about some of the stuff, like, you know, we already have talked a little bit about the song 2020. I wanted to talk about CD-ROM a little bit. So is that the kind of like, what does the journey look like from the page to the microphone for something like that? Is that, you know, where did it start? Is it part of a journal thing? Is it, you know, how did it work?
Yeah, that was really, that was the one that probably had the most sort of like free, like in the moment kind of like improvising word stuff wise, but then there were also things that were written out as well. So the music happened as an improvisation. It was recorded, and then I did a vocal overdub, and the vocal overdub was, I had done a scratch vocal that was kind of some of the stuff that we ended up using, and then I just did an overdub of other stuff, and that was just like, I think it was just like one take of like the song, and then it was like,
it's so cool. I love, you know, the line, don't let them tell you hunger is a virtue. I've been thinking about that one a lot, because well, 2020, I guess, you know, it's like there's a lot of people who it is for their benefit that we don't feel too put upon by our constant suffering, you know, and I thought a lot about that, but the song doesn't just sort of stay in one zone. It kind of goes all over the map, and it really felt, you know, maybe like having a conversation with you in a way, you know, the way it just sort of like, well, because you're talking about all this interesting stuff, and I mean, there's a second where, I mean, I think there's some Edgar Allan Poe in the mix, you know, where you're like, I don't know if that was imposed upon it later, but the line about the bricks and, you know, in the basement.
Yeah, that was yeah, there's actually a little section that isn't even from my life. It was literally like the section about living in a duplex with a lady named Luann. That's actually my friend Donovan Quinn, his that was like his, he was talking and I was like transcribing what he was saying. So that little section is like, just, he's an amazing storyteller. And I have ripped his shit off for years. Just like like there's a song called there's a CDR called If It's Not a Ford, It Sucks. I think I probably misinterpreted I think later Donovan was like, no, if it's not a Dodge, it sucks. Like, I don't know. Is Dodge a Ford? I don't even know anything about cars, but he was telling a story about his mom and like this horse he had on his farm, and I called the song "The Scream of the Glow of the Horses Screaming White," because that was something. So I have just been like ripping Donovan off for years, and this was another example. Just a section of that story was absolutely like word for word what he said. And then it's like 2 sentences of the song, and then some of it like the hunger is a virtue thing that came from something that I was writing that just, obviously we have, wherever you stand, like, there is such a darkness around the fact that, like, America has this history of deifying a certain very specific type of working class person, and yet, like, there is literally almost every moneyed nation in the world has in some way taken care of that class of person or whatever. And here we just have, like, your sacrifice is thank you. Thank you so much for your sacrifice. And it's like, fuck you. Like, absolutely not. That is not your death, your sickness, your pain is not a virtue that needs to be celebrated. It's something that should have been obliterated by the people who have the power to make changes for you. And instead, you just get to take pride in how shitty it is for you that you survived that shit.
Yeah. This year, it's mind blowing, right? Like, we saw, I mean, right as, let's say, the lockdown started, and who got classified as essential, and then you look at the disparity between what the essential people are paid, and how necessary what they're doing is. So it really was, like, it's nightmarish, right? Like, this idea that, like, this suffering is acceptable on any level when it's not.
And the really basic, just, I think the people that died would be glad that they sacrificed their life so the economy wouldn't shut down. There's just it's just, like, mind-boggling. And
I don't remember which specific villain said something exactly like that this year on the news, but there was one guy. I mean, just like you heard so many people saying, like, grandma would like it, if you could go to Halloween Spirit, and get whatever you need. I'm totally ripping off, what's his name, Tim Robinson there, I think you should leave comedian. Anyway. But yeah, so that's one of those songs where it does feel like there is, there's that rage, like, that you're talking about in that line. And then there's the sort of transcendence, of, I guess, taking mushrooms and sort of having this experience of, like, understanding what everything is. And it's just wild and beautiful that all that stuff is just kind of like, that's what makes it feel so 2020 to me, is that all of that stuff, somebody else's story, this, like, moment of glory, like, glorified understanding, this rage, this, other stuff that's happening in the basement, it's all in there, and it's like, that's what 2020 feels like, right? Like, it's never been more clear, and it's never been more kaleidoscopic than right now. So I think that song really kind of captures some of that.
Well, thanks. That's amazing. That's, like, that's so awesome that you are hearing that.
You made a solo record in 2014, or it was released in 2014, The Immoralists.
Yeah.
Which it bears noting features Waka Flocka Flame's face on the cover, and also the Enterprise behind you from The Next Generation, which so those are great cover things. This record also has really cool cover art.
Thank you.
And I wanted to ask you about who painted the 2020 cover, and did you guys have direction for them? Did somebody suggest the football? How did it work?
Well, it's so basically this, and, like, just be like, shut up, you're being boring now if this gets real boring. All right. So basically, we have a friend that we met through music, just Eric Lapierre. He's an architect from Paris, and he and his brother Philippe came to a show, and it was like that thing where I was like, oh, when a band just interlocks. He invited us to play the anniversary of a building that he had built, and he's such a giant music, like, freak that he actually invented a type of concrete that is and he called it it's like a Dead Sea concrete, because he loves the band the Dead Sea. And he's awesome. Just like, he's next level. And he and his brother, it was just like that interlocking thing when you meet somebody that you're just like, oh no, we're about to be best friends. We were like, we were like best friends from the get. And we just like into the same shit, just like became bros. And we've just hung out a lot over the years. And Philippe, he was like a weird, like food executive or something. I don't know. He did some crazy French man food stuff. He's like, but he's a really great artist and he's really smart, kind of weird brained man who, I mean that like the highest complimentary sense. And he actually created the cover. Philippe Lapierre blended. So I don't want to take credit. It's a little bit, you know, it's obviously not, it's not just an invention out of the pure air. It's like,
right.
So it's a Rousseau painting that I think was maybe called like the Footballers or something, but it's actually rugby. And I know this painting. I've known it since I was little. For some reason, I just always was really attracted to it. And part of like, actually when we were shooting the cover of I Trust My Guitar, like the first LP we ever did, I was like, take a picture of us running as fast as we can toward the camera downhill. And it was kind of that image from the Rousseau painting in my mind a little bit. But then I had kind of just like forgotten about it. And then I read this book. It was about a specific artist, but it was about like the Belle Epoque in France. Or am I saying that right? Belle. I know how to read words, but I can't say them with my mouth parts.
I think you got it right. I share that with you too, so I might not be a good judge.
Okay. I think that's like I feel like that's like a good thing when like you can read words and you know what they mean, but you can't say them because you're deranged. Okay. So, so basically like, it was about this artist named Robert Delaunay, which I'm also probably saying wrong, but it talked about, it was a time in France where there was like all of this kind of like fiscal prosperity, and also like industrialization was starting. So there was this brand new kind of weird everything that you had to do was like your body. And then all of a sudden, all of this mechanization came in and this influx of money and the mechanical, and life got a little bit like generalized, even in poverty, life got there's like a little bit of an ease or something. But there was also alongside that ease, there was this like separation of the body and the mind. There was this like dichotomy that happened. And so sport became like, especially very like brutal, violent, physical sport became like just like swept the nation. It was a giant trend. Part of like the painting that Rousseau did of these rugby players or whatever was part of that like romanticizing or idealization of this physical body, of the blood, you know, and like the violence. And I just thought it was so cool because when you like, if you look at like a parallel with like right after this kind of peaceful, jubilant, joyful, prosperous time, they got, you know, World War I, tuberculosis, like they got too much of the body and they got too much of the blood. But like before that, they were like that thing was like and this full contact thing. And I know this is like weird, but there was a group of humans that were that wrote a book. They used a pseudonym. I didn't know anything about them before I read this book about this artist, but they wrote something in like 1912 or around those times that was called Les gens. Let's see if I can say it in French. Hold on. I know.
I'm down.
Okay. Les gens d'aujourd'hui. So that means essentially the youth of today. And they talk a lot about how like rugby and these violent sports and the body and a return to blood and a return to like masculine. And I just thought it was super funny. I grew up in Connecticut. It was so funny to kind of like meet this idea while reading this book about an artist that I thought was, because late 80s, early 90s, you had youth crew hardcore, right? And what was that except this return to like this kind of like first of all, in the same way that like a painting of sports guys was kind of a departure from what the subject of painting was allowed to be in terms of like the larger scale of like, okay, you're allowed to have like a beautiful woman or a bowl of fruit, but like you weren't painting random sports, you know, like you weren't, that wasn't a painting subject. And Rousseau made it a painting subject. And this, like that movement made it a subject for art. So there's a band called Youth of Today from Connecticut. And like some of the quotes from this book could have been like Youth of Today lyrics, and it just cracked my brain up, and it brought me back to that Rousseau painting. And I just was like looking at it, I was like, oh, that's so amazing. And it culturally, it kind of a little bit to some extent ran a parallel, right? Because you had when history ended or whatever, when history stopped, it was like pretty chill, a lot of prosperity, moving, you know, instead of the Industrial Revolution, the technological revolution, again, that dichotomy, taking away the brain from the body, and this kind of desire for like a masculine blood violence right before like our endless magical oil field wars, our now pandemic, the blood and the body come right fucking back, right? And there was this little halcyon bookend in this, and it just cracked me up, the parallel and the weird, like, I don't know. So then I was like, hey, Philippe, Pete, Shaw, we should do this as a cover, just kind of like, I also had done like a sketch that ended up being the other side of the cover. So I was like, we could use this too. I did a drawing. And I talked to Pete and Sean and was like, you know, whatever. And Pete was like, dude, we should definitely do that. And I didn't tell him any of the background. I was just like, check out this. This is what our cover should be. Pete did he was like, I sent it to Philippe. He's working on it right now. And I was like, what? No, I don't know for sure. And then I saw it. And it just made me laugh. It looks like a prog rock.
It does. I love that it looks like a prog rock record. Yeah. And I love that this intense backstory of the cover, which, I mean, look, I'm going to be honest. When you ask a question like that, you hope that the answer is that cool. You know, like, hey, what inspired this cover? Most of the time it's like, well, our friend took that photo and it was like, that looked cool, you know, the end.
Usually it is like that. Kind of.
Right. I mean, it's such an interesting, talking about the thematic quality of the record and the contextualization of the record as a 2020 record called 2020, you know, and yeah, like, you know, it's funny that the for most people that I know sort of in like the music world, you know, or record store world or anything like that, you know, the circles I travel in, it was when South by Southwest got canceled that everything was like, oh, wait a minute. This is a big deal, you know? That's when I felt that. But it was actually when the NBA canceled a couple days later that most everybody that's when they realized, oh no. So sports in our country, you know, basketball certainly not being the most violent one we have going on, but you know, like there is something interesting about that, right? Like that like this is this thing that we crave so much, you know, that I mean, I'm sure you've seen some of the weird things with like the digital fans in
so weird, yeah.
You couldn't, you know, Philip K. Dick could not have written this more, you know, dystopian and stuff. So, but I do think about that. I think about how, you know, like you said, our relationship with blood and with the body and with it's like, this is a reminder that you don't escape the physical, right? You know?
Yeah.
And now, a word from our sponsors. Creators, are you tired of being paid in clicks and likes? Social media and streaming platforms help people find your work, but getting you paid is another story. Patreon is built for creators, not advertisers. Using it, you can develop a sustainable income source by offering a recurring membership to your fans. In turn, they'll get access to your exclusive community, premium content, and a chance to become active participants in the work they love. The creative system is broken. Sign up on patreon.com now. That's patreon.com and start building the steady income stream you deserve. And now, back to transmissions. You've made a lot of kinds of music, you know, and your solo record is a lot of song-based stuff, and there are parts of this that are very song-based, you know, but then there's also just the sort of like the very, you know, intense avant-garde noise side of things. You know, does that side of what you do creatively, does that feel tied almost to that sort of understanding of physicality or you know, at least sonic violence as something that you find to be sort of an interesting place to explore?
Yeah, I think of you know, I think what's weird is like if you conceive of yourself as like I remember when Markers first started, and you, this might happen to everyone, but for me it was very, very shocking, and like tectonic shifting of my brain happened because of it. I think my whole life I hadn't really like identified with like my body as or the way I just like lived. I was really, really just like I still think of myself as like a weird floating brain. I don't think about like my genitals or my boobs or like my fucking face or any of that stuff. It just wasn't, maybe I was raised in a way where like none of that was important, but that's not true, because my dad would be like, you got a big pimple on your face. So I did have some like, you know,
Sure.
awareness
Thanks,
of how
Dad.
I look or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Just to give a shout out to my dad for another thing that he said once, which was, he said something to me and I said, Dad, I was 15. And he was like, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, something kind of rude that he said. I'm sure I was being rude. I was a teenager. And I was like, Dad, what you're saying is going to give me low self-esteem. And he said, if that gives you low self-esteem, you don't deserve to have self-esteem.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, it was amazing. We still quote it to this day. It's like a Christmas tradition that we always talk about.
Yeah. But certainly it doesn't sound like you're not talking about being raised in you just didn't, you weren't thinking about your body.
I wasn't. And I wasn't really made to feel like I was a lady or a dude or, you know, any like, there was not a ton of like focus on my weight. I mean, I'm blessed in that way. None of like the stuff that I feel like a lot of people had to kind of fight through. I didn't have it the same exact way. So because I conceived of myself as a floating brain, when I was perceived as a woman by others, I was like somebody was like, she's not hot. I think she's something wrong, you know, or someone be like, she's hot. And I was like, what the fuck? Because no one had ever like, I don't know, just like seeing me as a woman doing stuff instead of seeing me as, because in my brain I was like, I probably look just like Ian Mackay. Like, I don't know. I guess in my brain I probably like identified with either a floating brain or like a little dude who's like, I don't know. So that for me was really weird, because I would try to physically like sort of like be present in my body and kind of like let what was happening be physically, like, especially before you like learn. Not everyone plays a lot of shows before they learn chords on the guitar, but I did, Jason, I did. And when we would play shows, it would be very physical, just sort of like feeling the rhythm of what Pete and Leah at the time were doing, and just sort of like letting what they were doing set my pacing. And it was really physical and completely body based. And then to have that then be like interpreted as something that was, it's neither here nor there. It's hardly like even worth talking about, but to have some of that, and it's old news, but to have that be interpreted as like sexual or something was like really weird for me, because I was just like physically like present. And even later, like I was like, ew, yeah, this dude said this gross thing to me about this thing. I was fucking like, what the hell? Like, I'm just like really tough. I don't know. In my head, I remember like, I was like, oh, I should stand like James Hetfield. That's how like you should stand when you're playing guitar, you know, like that.
Pretty wide stance,
it's
right?
It's a wide kind of like tough guy, you know, like it's like fucking like squared shoulders. Like I had like, you know, this thing, you have these like images in your brain. And so, yes, it was super physical. And then it kind of like ended up having weird, a lot of people are not as uptight as me. They wouldn't give a shit. I'm from Connecticut. I'm a floating brain. I don't understand these sensualities, they confuse and muddle my brain. So all of that really like disturbed my uptight ass. And I was like, no, that's weird. The word yeah. So I still think that if you're engaging with something on a sincere and if you're engaging by listening to each other and being really present, as corny as that word is, like what comes out is you're not, it's just going to be what's actually happening in that moment. So if it wasn't physical at all, that would make it would have nothing, that would not be music, right? Like music is bodily. It's bodily.
This year has obviously been a year where people have had to, I think, examine their relationship to the bodily aspect of music, like the physical side of things, right?
Oh my God, who knew? How?
Yeah.
I literally can't fucking believe how much I miss shows. I thought.
Yeah.
Have you ever been bored at a show?
I mean, of course.
Yeah, right? I can't even remember being bored at a show. I can't remember like being shoulder to shoulder with someone and seeing some yahoo sit on the stage and do something and having the temerity to be bored. How dare I have? I would give my eye teeth to just like be like fucking chock-a-block with some idiots in a room sweating, watching some dum-dum do something I hated. I would love that. Like, I didn't know how bad it would be and how much I needed that. I didn't.
Well, sure. Yeah. I don't think I did either. I don't know. You know, it's this weird thing, right? Where it's like, there were points of my life where I was at a show, 4 nights a week sometimes,
and weren't you just like, I want to die?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's weird because it wasn't until I started to get a little bit older and I started to need more sleep, and the idea of staying at a show until whatever 2 a.m. and then just like, I'm just going to drive my car to work and I'll just sleep in my car for a couple hours and then I'll go into work and it won't be that bad. Like that feeling of just like just being immersed in live music. But, over the last couple of years, I've become much more comfortable and I've become much more accustomed to sleep. So, there's lots of nights where I'm like, boy, this show's going on tonight, but I don't think I'm going to make it out. I'll catch them next time. And it's just this feeling now of just like, boy, how many of those moments, feel like they're biting back at us, because you just wish you could go see anything or go do anything. And then when you watch these streams, you don't feel that physical thing that you're talking about as much as I've seen great ones. And I really enjoyed some of them. I mean, I watched this William Tyler thing last night and it was just like, it was so good. And I felt like spiritually uplifted, but it didn't have that physical thing of like the bass amp kind of like rattling you just a little bit. Yeah. And I think that listening to this record, there is that, what you guys did a great job capturing that physical, that feeling of like a rumble, like a rumbling band, that's like pretty essential to what you guys do. But I have to wonder, how does it feel knowing that you've got these songs, but you don't know when you're going to get out to sort of explode them in front of people? How does I mean, do you feel okay at the moment? What helps you feel okay if you do?
That's a good question, because this is so divorced from how, like, when a record comes out, you're like, oh, like you're to some. So I joked about like being in a room where you're just like bored and annoyed, like that you're, oh my God, I can't believe there's 5 bands. Oh my God, there's 6 bands. Are you fucking serious? Like, where you're just like, tired and like or just like, now I know it to be like oblivious to how cool what it is that's happening is just, it was just your everyday life. So normally when a record's about to come out, there, we had, set up a tour in July and had like, 2 weeks we're going to do in July, and then we are going to do a couple weeks in the fall, and, kind of just do like little like 2-week guys here and there, and maybe some weekend stuff or whatever. And it puts you in the, like, music changes so much when you play it live every night. And like, just, I credit touring in general with just like making my brain better. Like, it, every night you're back, just for me as a person with numerous executive function disorders, it was very positive to, your back is against the wall every night. You have to produce work, and it might suck or it might be good, or you're like, the energy of the humans that you're around is creating the work there too. So you have this really positive, lovely kind of like exchange, and you see your friends, and you see like what people are, I mean, just culturally, like, you're like, oh my God, I've never heard this before. What is this? You play records at people's houses and they turn you on to stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, check out this book. And I feel like I have like a weird gauze where it's just like my brain. I don't want just my brain. Like, I need more brain. Like, I love the energy and the loop of other humans, kind of like making me better. I would say everyone I'm friends with is way smart. Like, I would say almost everyone I'm friends with is way smarter than me, and way like helps me to think in different ways and conceive of things in different ways, and pushes me intellectually and like emotionally to be a better person, and just ethically. Like, that's what I value in the people, especially from, I would say, in this particular little like microcosmic scene of humans. There's just some mind blowers out there, and they're just like walking around like they're not mind blowers. And so it's like that is what is really different to me, and what I really, really, really miss, because of how essential it is to my brain and my life. I have some family that is unwell, and I'm going to be traveling east, which is weird because I have been on, like, there's people on normal lockdown, and then there's people who have managed to be on straight up 3 miles from their house at all times lockdown, and I'm in that category. I have barely like, we went swimming in June.
Yeah.
An hour and a half south of here, in a river in a forest. It was amazing. That furthest. Fantastic. Thank you. That's the furthest I've been from home since.
Yeah.
And this is the longest I've ever been away from New England. And my family, we got a house in Humboldt County, which is a fucking miracle that the best place I've ever lived in my life happened to coincide with being locked into your house. I don't know. We've lived in apartments. I've had like wildly bad roommates. Like, I can't imagine what my life would be like if I was like stuck in lockdown with like a dude. He's a super sweet dude, but his friend like stole my piggy bank and my Dr. Doom record. It was not cool. And like, so imagine if you were like locked down in those situations.
Sure.
So this was for me like I feel like super grateful and lucky, but missing how the normal move of a record, because touring on the new record is also like, then you're like, oh hell no, I'm sick of this shit, let's write a new record. Like, when you and then you wear those songs out and you're just like, oh, new songs, and it helps, it makes you want to write new stuff. I mean, the Serenade of the Fantasy Tour, the touring on that record that came out 4 million years ago, that record, I wrote a bunch of the stuff that, anyway, that's where I get like, so I've eloquently described exactly what I mean. I've been very clear and lucid in this answer, but yeah, so I'm traveling east for the first time in the history of my pandemic experience on Wednesday, and I'm like, it's crazy. So I'm really excited to be going home to my land, to my people, my pizza that I love and miss so very much. Pizza is not the same.
Well, I'm in Arizona, so I'm West Coast by default, ish.
Once we fall into the ocean, you'll be coastal.
I mean, look, and no offense to you guys, but I'm ready for my oceanfront property here.
The Cascadian subduction zone has your back.
Yeah. No, sometimes I joke with my wife, like everybody, about what's going to happen, in November. I mean, like, I made the joke once. I said, someday we might need to move to another country, and everybody laughed. And then I said, well, hell, someday where I'm at might become a new country. So there's really no saying, So I do think about what you're talking about, though. And I do think that this year people have had to examine their relationship to place just as much as they have their live music, So to close, I wanted to ask you a little bit about how different it feels to be out West when, New England and the East, has been such a big part of your life. I mean, we'll start broadly. Do you like it out there?
I do. And like, I feel really lucky that, I have like a person in my life who I like this much, that like is constantly kind of challenging me and inspiring me. Like, and that's that this person is in my life at a time where I'm locked into a house. Cause you've been in probably relationships with people where you're like, yeah, we are still dating. I'm not totally, and I just feel lucky that this person that like I really like better than almost anyone in the world is like the person I'm locked down with. And I live in a place that's just stupid beautiful. Like just every second you go somewhere and you're just like, oh, look at that, that's ridiculous. It's enormous. Yeah. Gorgeous here. And outside of kind of my imaginative brain for like if you grow up somewhere where things look one way, which is also very beautiful, I love New England, but everything's huge here. The beach is huge, the highways are huge, the trees are huge, everything's like, the vegetables grow bigger. It's just, New England is like, I was built by one man who paved a cow path. And like, yeah. Here is just this. It just seems like something that was built by imaginary, mythical. Well, it seems like Paul Bunyan did actually like do the West or whatever. It's just such a huge scale of things. So it's beautiful. And it's like, there's not real winter, which is weird. I was like eating lemons off a tree in December. That's so strange and surreal. Yeah. And maybe that's probably why the pandemic happened. It was punishment for my plenty. As a Puritan, I know now why this happened. It was to punish me for how beautiful things were. Yeah. But all that said, the pizza is way inferior and the Mexican food's way better. So there's really good tacos, really stupid pizza. And I think like that's really wrapped things up. I think that's that's what we'll title this episode, really good tacos and really bad pizza. Well, it's been really, really like a great pleasure talking with you. Same here. This has been like a fun conversation. That's always the hope, and this one was, I'm going to be honest, more fun than a lot of them. So I'm glad I caught you in like pandemic time capsule mode. You know what I mean? Because you're going to go someplace and you're going to have experiences, and I'm sure you're going to be. I'm going to feel different. Like a little different. In a week, I'm going to be like, I saw my dad. Yeah. Like I ate, Pepe's pizza and Elmwood pizza and pasta pizza. I'm a totally like normal person again. Yeah. You're gonna have a lot of pizza adventures. And I'm glad that we were able to talk though. And I really appreciate you taking the time here on a Sunday. And it's been great having you on Transmissions. It's been great to be on Transmissions. Thank you so much, seriously, for asking me to do this. You guys are awesome. And thanks for your close listen to the record. It's so really, really nice to talk about it.
Aquarium Drunkard Transmissions podcast. I'm your host, Jason P. Woodbury. I write and produce the show. Our audio is edited by Andrew Horton. Michael Krasner records supplemental audio. Jonathan Mark Walls does video production. Art by D. Norson and Heavy Hymns. Executive producer and guru, Justin Gage. If you enjoyed our show, please share it with a friend. Let them know they can get it wherever they listen to podcasts and direct from Aquarium Drunkard. If you want to take your support a step further, check us out over on Patreon. Transmissions airs every Wednesday with bonus drops when we feel like it. We'll be back next week with another strange talk for these strange times.
You can't shatter